This ingenuity is a beacon of innovation, breaking the barrier between dream and reality, beyond the constraints of convention, to embrace the boundless possibilities. Beneath his metallic exterior lies a symphony of cutting-edge components meticulously designed to harness the power of unrivaled Mach speed. Behold perfection. This is Gauss.
What's good, folks? It's WARFRAME here with a new Warframe video coming at you with Gauss builds. Gauss is definitely not for those who like to sit still and be on the way. He has a very active playstyle that rewards you for being aggressive and reckless. A set of abilities that synergize so well with each other, making him one of the best designed Warframes. First, let's go over his kit and see what makes him work. But to understand his abilities, you have to understand his passives. Gauss has a battery meter that fills up when building up kinetic energy, meaning when you just move around. The neutral maximum that it can charge up to is 80%. The amount of battery stored will amplify and increase the potency of his abilities. He also increases his shield recharge rate and delay the more battery stored. Now, for an unorthodox method, I will start off with his fourth ability, Redline, as all of his other abilities will tie into this one, as the other three abilities will either charge or deplete Redline. Since Redline allows you to go beyond the 80% threshold to further maximize the potency of his abilities. It also increases your casting speed, attack speed, reload speed, and fire rate. And it also deals periodic puncture and impact damage within the AoE while staggering enemies. And also, when this ability is cast or ends, you deal a shockwave that deals damage and knocks back enemies. The first ability, Mach Rush. This will have Gauss accelerate and collide with enemies, causing a shockwave. A single tap will do a small dash, while holding down the ability will continuously have Gauss moving. To cancel, just tap the button again, melee, aim, whatever. This will positively charge the battery percentage, giving you 10% each cast and 1% for each enemy hit, and a percentage based on the distance traveled. When amplified with Redline, Mach Rush will have its energy cost halved. When combined with his second ability, it will deal slash damage and inflict bleed to enemies caught in the explosion radius. And using Mach Rush through an area affected by your third ability adds cold or heat to its shockwave explosion. His second ability, Kinetic Plating. Gauss will generate a field around him, gain damage reduction based on the battery meter and strength. You have increased damage resistance towards physical damage, heat, cold, and blast. This damage reduction will also give you crowd control immunity and convert damage taken into energy. It negatively impacts the charging of your battery the more hits you take. However, you can charge 0.25% of your battery by melee attacking enemies. When this ability is amplified with Redline, you gain 100% damage reduction, 100% melee base damage, and 100% chance to stagger enemies on hit. Sunder, his third ability, and Helminth. It has 2 damage modes, several effects, and synergies. Quick tapping this ability will deal cold damage and leave a field that deals cold damage over time, and proc the cold status effect while also charging your Redline. Casting the cold thermal sunder on enemies affected by the cold status effect will have them instantly freeze. Redline makes the cold field last longer, deal more damage, and instantly freeze enemies. By holding down this ability, Sunder deals heat damage and a heat proc while it depletes the battery. Casting this ability on enemies affected by heat will take double damage. Redline makes you instantly deal double heat damage and it won't drain your battery, while the heat field lasts longer. Sunder has a mechanic where you can combine the 2 forms of this ability to create more devastation and increase your damage output. Casting heat, then cold, will deal blast damage and trigger a reaction to pull in enemies towards you. Casting cold, then heat will deal blast damage yet again, but knocking enemies away from you. And when this combination is executed with Redline, it will cause the same reaction, but also completely armor stripping the enemies. Another cool tip using this ability, you don't have to cast it twice to get the push and pull reaction. You can prime enemies with heat, then cast cold to pull them in, and vice versa. Using the secondary weapon Epitaph modded with heat, you can have both of these elements present since it force procs cold, and depending on what form of Sunder you trigger, you can either push or pull in enemies. These builds are min-max loadouts. You can still achieve similar results, or even better if you have Tau Forge Archon Shards. Gauss will benefit greatly with red duration Archon Shards. Maximizing duration is key for Gauss, but that also does harm his kit if not done properly, as in fully going into duration will kill your range, and the negative range does harm his Thermal Sunder. However, there are builds that don't use Thermal Sunder. Both Mach Rush and Cold Sunder charge 10% of your battery meter, so depending on how you play or what you do with Gauss will come down to the build. I do have 5 duration shards on my Gauss, giving me 50% additional duration for all of my builds. My main Gauss build does not use Helminth abilities, where it's min-max to have more than enough duration but also having range to utilize his Thermal Sunder. 2 Helminth abilities that synergize well with his kit: Silence and Energized Munitions. Both of these require having a build with decent duration. Silence is an invisible aura that stuns enemies who enter its radius. The enemies stunned are susceptible to stealth multipliers and cannot perform any special abilities. For example, Xmas cannot use their unique abilities and even remove the nullifying aura that the Acolyte Violence has. The stun only lasts for 2 seconds and cannot be recast. And once the stun is over, enemies are free to shoot back but still cannot perform their special abilities. The only way to refresh the stun if the enemies are removed from the aura radius and reintroduced to the ability once again, meaning just moving back and forth from the enemies. And you can easily do this by Mach Rushing in and out. And this is where controlled range comes in, because the larger the radius, the further you have to distance yourself from the enemies to re-stun them. And your enemies that you encounter can't be stunned as they've already experienced the Silence Aura. Having a controlled range allows you to reduce the Silence Aura range so you can stun newer enemies or re-stun the old ones, making this Helminth perfect for melee Gauss. But for this loadout, you will need to have 79% range. That's a maxed out narrow-minded and stretch. This gives you 15.8 meters on silence. For the second Helminth ability, you have Energized Munitions. While this ability is active, it grants all your guns 75% ammo efficiency, meaning a 75% chance to not consume ammo. This percentage does not scale with anything, and the duration is at a base of 5 seconds and requires a decent amount of duration to slightly last longer. And guess what? Gauss can take full advantage of this if you replace Thermal Sunder, as he can focus more on duration. Alright, with all of this out of the way, let's take a look at the builds. The first build is a non-Helminth build. In terms of Arcanes, I'm using Arcane Energize for the energy regen upon energy pickup. This build utilizes a lot of ability spam. And the second Arcane is Molt Efficiency. When you have shields, you gain increased duration, fitting perfectly with Gauss. In the aura, I have Enemy Radar for that 30 meters of enemy mapping. Rush for the 30% sprint speed, pairing well with his Mach Rush. Primed Continuity, Constitution, and Augur Message for the duration, bringing my duration to 207%. And with the 5 Archon Shards takes us up to 257 duration. Range at 175% with Stretch and Augur Reach. This gives Mach Rush and Thermal Sunder decent range. Rolling Guard for the invulnerability when you dodge roll and status cleansing. This is very beneficial when your Kinetic Plating runs out. And finally, Archon Vitality. This gives me health and doubles my heat damage, pairing well with Thermal Sunder. For the focus school, I highly suggest using Zeneric because this will give you ample energy, pairing well with an ability spam loadout. Moving on to the second build. This is using the Silence Helminth. For the Arcanes, I am using Molt Efficiency yet again and Arcane Strike. But then again, the second Arcane is up to you. The Aura and Exilus are still the same. Duration is a lot higher though, because we have Prime Continuity, Constitution, and Narrow-Minded, taking my duration all the way up to 332%. Since I don't need to recast my abilities as much, I do not have Prime Flow, and instead I have 3 Gladiator mods. You don't even need to max these mods. The Gladiator mods are there for the crit chance increase when you build up combo, basically a second Blood Rush. And this is going to be paired with my melee weapon of choice, the Guandao Prime. I chose the Guandao because it's pretty basic, and with the Gladiator mods, along with its base crit chance and Blood Rush, allows me to hit consistent red crits. Taking a look at the Guandao build. It's your usual non-elemental slash build because the weapon is mainly slash. Condition overload for the base damage, Blood Rush, Organ Shatter, and Gladiator Might are there for the crit damage, and Gladiator Might is my 4th Gladiator mod. With all of the crit chance built up, I get 313% crit chance. That is consistent red crits. I do not need to mod for attack speed here because I have Arcane Strike on my melee, and Gauss's Redline increases my attack speed yet again. So I opted for Spring Loaded Blade, increasing my range yet again. I have a swing radius of 8 meters on my Guandao. We'll be using an Epitaph to prime enemies. The Epitaph force procs cold, and this increases the stun duration of silence because it pairs well with slow effects. And not only that, cold procs also increase your crit damage. Not by much, but still it's a little bit of a damage increase. It's a simple viral and heat build using the secondary dexterity because I will have 2 dexterity arcanes on my primary and secondary, and this way I can maintain my combo. Moving on to the third build. This is the Energized Munitions build. For the Arcanes in this build, I still have multi-efficiency, but I decided to run Arcane Avenger. Arcane Avenger grants me a flat 45% crit chance increase whenever I take damage. And this can easily be procced by just running around and having enemies hit you. And thanks to Kinetic Plating, you have that juicy damage reduction. The build is somewhat similar to the Silence build. However, I do not have the Gladiator mods, but I did increase my duration even further, boosting my energized munitions to 17.8 seconds. Preparation so I can have 100% energy when I start a mission. This is perfect for quick and easy missions because you go in, press your abilities, and go to town on enemies with your AoE weapon. Vigorous Swamp is here for the additional base damage when you do a quick weapon swap. Alright folks, these are the Gauss builds. Devastating and powerful. Gauss is just one of those frames that was perfectly designed and never needed a Helminth ability to begin with. But these are the things that you can do. Since you do have the Helminth, why not use it to optimize specific loadouts? Anyway folks, that has been it from me. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, share, and
subscribe
for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace. Bye-bye now.